Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
You're listening to House of Cards.
Today, the game is different.
I want to gamble. Gambling is a very serious business. Is that clear?
Welcome to House of Cards. Dave Weishuttle with you here, deep from the swamps of Jersey. We got a great show coming up for you. When you hear the name Larry Bird, you think of one of the NBA's greatest players. But after that, you really don't know how he became one of NBA's greatest players. He didn't like giving a lot of interviews, so not a lot of people knew about how he grew up, what his family life was like, or even what his life was like at Indiana State. I mean, we know he's a great basketball player. That's about it. Well, a new book gives us an inside look of how Larry Bird grew up and how he became one of the best ever. The name of the book is Heartland, and it's written by Keith O'Brien, and it gives us a look at the early life of Larry Bird. It's an amazing book, and we're going to hear all about it because we are going to be talking with Keith O'Brien. So when we come back, we're talking all about Larry Bird. So stick around. We'll be right back with House of Cards. Hey, Dave Weishuttle from House of Cards. I just got my dugout mug delivered, and I am loving it. Dugout mugs are mugs made out of baseball bats, and they are officially licensed by Major League Baseball so you can get your favorite baseball team's logo on your mug. Just think of it, enjoying your favorite drink while watching your favorite baseball team with your team's logo on your mug made from a baseball bat. They can even make customized mugs. Check out the mug they made for House of Cards. I mean, just look at that. That looks awesome. I've never seen anything like them. If you go to dugoutmugs.com, you'll find out they even make more things than mugs. They have baseball board games, grilling equipment made from baseball bats. They even have a section for gifts for under $30. Head on over to dugoutmugs.com because if you're a baseball fan or need a gift for a baseball fan, you have to check out Dugout Mugs. And use our promo code PIKE at checkout to get 20% off your purchase price. That's promo code PIKE, P-I-K-E. Also, free shipping with orders over $99. You can't beat that. DugoutMugs.com. That's my go-to place if I need a gift for a baseball fan. Well, if you excuse me now, the game is about to go on, and the wind is just right for drinking. Hey, this is Dave Weishuttle from House of Cards with your House of Cards gaming report for the week of April 20th, 2026. In February, Nevada casinos generated about $1.2 billion in gaming revenue, extending a 5-year streak of monthly wins above $1 billion. The Las Vegas Strip accounted for the bulk of the total, posting $696.3 million in revenue, which is 56% of the statewide win. Nevada has collected $775.8 million in gaming taxes so far this fiscal year. ESPN and the World Series of Poker announced a multi-year agreement to bring poker's most prestigious event back to the ESPN platforms. The deal is highlighted by a 3-night live linear finale for the main event final table on August 3rd through the 5th from 9 p.m. to midnight. Under the agreement, ESPN will deliver over 100 hours of comprehensive multi-platform coverage of the WSOP main event. And finally, Churchill Downs Racetrack unveiled its 3rd annual Kentucky Derby Style Guide to help fans plan their wardrobe for the 152nd Run for the Roses. The Style Guide presents Derby fashion as its own gallery of art that honors the race's timeless traditions while embracing today's trends and cultural influences. So start planning what you're going to wear because the Kentucky Derby takes place on Saturday, May 2nd. Have any news or tips regarding casinos, gaming, or legislation? Send us an email at newsroom@houseofcardsradio.com and follow us on X at HOC Radio.
You're listening to House of Cards.
Your Majesty, the royal wrestlers await.
I'll bet on the little guy. How much? 3,000 guineas, 2 geese, and a duck. That's a foul bet.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishuttle with you. I'm from New Jersey, but in the early 90s, I was in Boston going to law school, and you couldn't go anywhere around the city without hearing about Larry Bird. But it was interesting. He was the most famous person that you knew nothing about. Well, I just read an absolutely amazing book about Bird's early years in Indiana and his amazing years at Indiana State. The name of the book is called Heartland, written by Keith O'Brien, and it's an incredible look at the early life of Larry Bird, and we are lucky to have Keith O'Brien on the line with us right now. Keith, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
First off, congratulations. Heartland is an outstanding book. And I also love the quote on the dust jacket of the book: "A forgotten place, an impossible dream, and the miracle of Larry Bird." You're a New York Times best-selling author of books like Charlie Hustle, Fly Girls, Outside Shot. I'm curious, what motivated you to write about Larry Bird and tell the story of his early years in Indiana and his years before really going to Boston?
Well, two reasons. My last book was Charlie Hustle, the book about the rise and fall of Pete Rose.
Mm-hmm.
And for that book, I spent a lot of time back in the Midwest, back where I was born. I'm born and raised in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And as I came out of that project, I was just looking around and thinking about other Midwestern stories that had been maybe overlooked. And, of course, I thought about Larry Bird. And as I thought about it, I wasn't interested in telling the typical story. Every time we've come to this story, we always end up telling it the same way. We always do the Bird magic thing, where we lump together the stories of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. And, I get it. I understand why we do that, of course. Bird and Magic, of course, will play against each other in that epic championship game in March 1979, and then they will go on to save the NBA. So I get it. Yeah. But the reality is, in the 70s, they didn't know each other. They'd met
Mm-hmm.
one time. In that one time, they'd barely spoken. So they're not friends. They're not rivals. They're not anything in 1979. And what I wanted to do was just sort of tilt the camera a little bit differently, change the perspective and zoom in on this origin story of Larry Bird in rural Indiana. And when you do it that way, what you end up getting is almost a completely different story. And maybe more importantly, Dave, you get this totally new cast of characters, a group of people who were around Bird in those days, who do form and shape and at times save him. And that's the story I wanted to tell here.
Now, Bird was famous for not talking to journalists. Did that make writing this book about Bird even more challenging? He didn't give a lot of interviews in Indiana. He certainly did not talk about his past and his family. In fact, he did his best to try and avoid reporters and the press. How difficult did that make the process of writing this book?
How much time do you have here, Dave?
Right.
At times it was like this is like almost like a very meta experience, right? I'm writing a book about a guy who won't talk to the media, and at the time I'm doing it, he won't talk to me. Of course, it's a challenge. And as a historian, as a journalist, I do want to talk to everybody, anyone I can. But I have learned over the years, in part, through that book about Pete Rose, that, while it's great, of course, to talk to the central characters, you can often get a more accurate portrait of that character by talking to 15, 25, 75 people around him. And that's what I set out to do here. I conducted more than 200 hours of interviews for this book. I unearthed diaries, journals, memos, letters, documents that never been utilized before for any book about Larry Bird. Listen, the story's bigger than Larry. This is, certainly his origin story, a story of his rise in rural Indiana in the 1970s. But it is also the story of this miracle 1979 Indiana State team.
Yeah.
And in that way, it is a story of a time, a place, a moment. And this moment is so big that it changes everything, not just for Larry and Magic Johnson, but for countless other people. And that's the story that I was telling here.
Now, if you're a basketball fan, you always heard about Larry Bird, and especially the place where he was from, which was French Lick, Indiana. And, I am so glad you're on here, because every time I heard the word French Lick, I had these images of what could this town be like and what was this area like. So, and now I'm actually talking to someone who knows about French Lick. Paint us a little picture of what French Lick was like and what it was like growing up in that town.
So, in the 1920s, 100 years ago, before the stock market crash, before the Great Depression, French Lick was a bit of a vacation town, a resort community. It had 2 large hotels there, and it was, a spot that Midwesterners would come to in the summer, coming down from Chicago or over from Cincinnati. But the Great Depression changes all that. Those hotels shutter, close, the economy craters. And in the years where Bird is growing up in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, it's a troubled place. Mm-hmm. Unemployment in Orange County, Indiana, where French Lick is, looms around 18-20% all the time. People in French Lick and West Baden Springs, the 2 communities where Bird grows up, really are living on the fringe of poverty. Bird's family certainly is.
Yeah.
And so that's the world that Larry Bird comes up in, and so because of that, and because of struggles in his own family, his father's itinerant employment and unemployment. His father struggles with drinking and alcoholism. Larry Bird doesn't grow up dreaming of being a star basketball player. He doesn't grow up dreaming of going to college or playing in the NBA. Those are absurd dreams for a boy in French Lick in the early 1970s. All Larry wants to do is maybe one day be as good at playing basketball as his older brother, Mark, who played on the varsity high school team in French Lick, a couple years before him. Mark Bird was known as the best shooter folks had ever seen from 15 foot and in. And Larry just wants to be as good as him, and that is the extent that he is willing to dream, in the 1970s.
Larry Bird did not have an easy childhood, certainly. I mean, when talking about his father and the serious issues he was dealing with, that eventually led to his suicide. And those early years seemed pretty difficult for Larry Bird. Talk to me about growing up in his high school years. It seemed like he did not get a lot of accolades in the press that he pretty much deserved when he was in high school. I guess maybe it was the place he was from. Maybe not a lot of press got out to French Lick, but I know Bird made it to the Indiana high school all-star team and complained that he didn't get enough playing time and actually refused to re-enter the game after sitting out most of the second half. How did Bird's family life and his high school years tend to shape him as he developed as a basketball player?
Well, Bird's never the best player on his own team until his senior year. And between his junior and senior year, Bird has a growth spurt that's going to change basketball history. He's going to grow about 3 to 4 inches in the span of about 6 or 8 months. It's a stunning growth spurt, and it does change everything. And that senior year at Springs Valley High School, the 73-74 season, Larry Bird is a star. Mm-hmm. He's setting scoring records at Springs Valley. He's filling little gyms in rural Indiana. But, just take a look at where Springs Valley or where French Lick is on the map. Yeah. It's 2 hours from almost anywhere. It's tucked away in the deep southwest corner of the state. As he's putting up these numbers, a lot of people don't put any stock in them. Springs Valley High School is playing, other little towns. They're not playing big powerhouse schools. And so while Bird makes the all-star team, he really does so only because of some politicking that a local sports writer does, who works at a paper, down in the southwest Indiana. Bird doesn't play much on that team. He's not well known, and he is, coming out of a house that's, really struggling. By then, Bird's parents have divorced. Larry's father is living with his own parents in West Baden, a little town just north of French Lick. He's struggling, with his drinking. He's struggling to meet his legal commitments and pay child support. All of these things are really looming over Larry Bird, as he graduates from high school in 1974, and as he goes off to college, initially agreeing to play for Bobby Knight at Indiana University in Bloomington.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side.
You're listening to House of Cards.
I'm talking sick piles of money. I'm talking lay on your bed in your Vegas room, throw the money in the air, and dance as it showers down on you money. I'm talking frosted glass limo money. I'm talking big cowboy hat, silver turquoise buckle money. I'm talking gambling.
I am in love with you.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishottle with you. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with Keith O'Brien, author of Heartland, A Forgotten Place, An Impossible Dream, and the Miracle of Larry Bird. I would think as a gifted basketball player and being from Indiana, that would be the choice for any basketball player in the state of Indiana, going to play for Indiana University and playing for Bobby Knight. And certainly, as you said, Larry Bird had a chance to do that in his college career, but that didn't last very long. What happened to Larry Bird at Indiana University? I got a sense from reading the book that the experience was completely overwhelming for him. How do you view his time at Indiana University?
Well, I mean, it's an epic failure.
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it. You're right. Any college, high school basketball player would have, cut off a finger to play for Bobby Knight in 1974. I'm not really sure Bird wanted to go there in the first place. But once he gets there, he does struggle. He feels poor in Bloomington. He feels lost on that campus, which is had a population that was 15 times the size of French Lick. I mean, just the campus is 15 times the size of French Lick.
Yeah.
And he feels unwanted in that locker room. That's a really good Hoosiers basketball team that is coming to school that summer. Without Larry, that Hoosiers team, that Bobby Knight team, is going to go 63-1 over the next two seasons. They're going to lose one game in 2 years. It's a team that has, again, without Bird, 4 future NBA players. 40 years of NBA service coming into that locker room, 30,000 NBA points. I mean, it's a great team.
Yeah.
the big mistake is that Bobby Knight doesn't take a minute to get to know Larry Bird. He doesn't know who he is at all. Not at all. He doesn't know what he needs. He doesn't know how he feels. He doesn't know how he's broken. And Larry is broken in some ways, as he reports to campus late that summer. And for all those reasons, Larry does quit, and he quits in a span of just 3 weeks. And I pinpointed for this book in my reporting the exact day that Larry Bird goes home. It is Friday, September 13th, 1974. Bird walks into the office of the man who has recruited him, not Bobby Knight, but Bobby Knight's assistant, a man named Dave Bliss.
Yep.
And Bliss is panicked when Bird walks in announcing he's leaving because Bliss does know Larry a little bit. And he does know that Larry doesn't say things that he doesn't mean. He's not a guy who's saying things for drama, saying things to stir the pot. When Larry says something, he means it. Bliss knows this, but in that moment, there's nothing Bliss can do to change his mind, and there's nothing that Bobby Knight can do either. Because on that night, Friday, September 13th, 1974, Bobby Knight's not on campus. He's given a talk at the Fort Wayne Marriott up the road in northwest Indiana, and where people are paying $25 at the door to hear the great Bobby Knight speak. Meanwhile, Larry Bird has walked out to Highway 37 and started to hitchhike home to French Lick.
Now, Larry Bird leaves Indiana University, and in the 70s, the NCAA is not like what it is today. He couldn't enter a transfer portal and immediately go to another school. He had to sit out a year. And from the book, I found it fascinating what he did during that year between Indiana University and Indiana State University. What was that year like for Larry Bird, and how did he occupy his time?
Well, he has to sit out 2 years.
Oh,
I mean, he's going to lose that year because he's left.
Yeah.
And then if he transfers to another school, he loses yet another year of eligibility. So it's 2 years in the wilderness for Larry. And, that first year is the darkest of the years. It is a moment in time where, again, based on my reporting, we nearly lose Larry Bird forever. He almost slips away forever. There is an alternative reality out there where we don't know his name, where he never gets back on a court again, where he does, end up getting a job at the Kimball piano plant, working as a wood finisher like his father. I mean, that world exists out there. He returns home to French Lick. He briefly enrolls in vocational school. He briefly plays for the basketball team there. Then he quits that team, quits that school, drops out again. In that moment, Larry Bird then gets that job working for the city street department in French Lick, where, among other duties, he's collecting the trash. And in that winter, his father, unravels completely. Tragedy on the doorstep of the Bird house. Larry's father is going to take his own life. And by, February, March, April 1975, Larry Bird is telling everybody that he's not going back to college. And again, when Larry Bird says something, he means it. He maybe most importantly, Larry's telling that to his mother. And, as a result, Georgia Bird is slamming the door in the face of any recruiter who shows up in French Lick. She will do the same to an assistant coach from Indiana State, a little school, independent school teetering on the edge of Division II. This assistant coach, a man named Bill Hodges, comes down looking for Larry in April 1975. And once again, Georgia slams the door in Bill Hodges' face. This is the turning point right here, Dave. Bill Hodges turns around and drives back to Terre Haute, taking the hints from Georgia Bird. I don't think Larry ever goes back to college, but Bill Hodges is stubborn just like Larry. He's born in rural Indiana just like Larry. and he won't go back. He drives the streets that day looking for Larry Bird. As he says, there can't be too many 6'7" blonde kids in this town. And Bill Hodges finds him, and then that is the moment that changes everything.
Tell me about when he got to Indiana State. I mean, it seemed like from head coach Bob King to Bill Hodges and even head of communications from Indiana State, Ed McKee, it seemed like they were creating a support system for Larry Bird. Was that structure at Indiana State helpful in allowing him to really grow as a basketball player?
Well, not only does it help him grow as a basketball player, I think it saves him again.
Yeah.
Bill Hodges, the assistant who recruits Larry, the assistant who drives down to French Lick looking for him, he really connects with Larry on a human level. And he understands Larry in a way that Bobby Knight never did. And so, Bill Hodges builds effectively a safe place for Larry Bird, which is what he needs in that moment in time. Bill Hodges recruits to come to Terre Haute one of Larry Bird's high school classmates and teammates at Springs Valley High School, a guard named Danny King. Yeah. Bill Hodges puts these two young men up together. They become roommates. Bill Hodges gets a job for Larry with the richest man in town, a man named Max Gibson. Helping to put money in Larry's pocket, money that Larry needed. And then, in that second year in the wilderness, because again, Larry can't play that year. He's got to pay a price for having committed to Bobby Knight. He's got to sit out an entire year, another one. Bill Hodges, helps Larry yet again. Larry really sought refuge on the basketball court. That was the place where he found peace. And he can't play, and, it hurts Larry. And so, at one point in that year, Bill Hodges and Bob King, the head coach at Indiana State, they get Larry a key to the boys' club in downtown Terre Haute, where Larry can come and go as he please, shooting anytime he wants. And Bill Hodges, that lead recruiter for Indiana State, will drive home, from late night, trips to rural Illinois or rural Indiana, drive downtown on his way to his house, and he'll see the lights on in the boys' club. It's midnight. It's 1 a.m, and Bill Hodges will walk into the club there, and there's Larry Bird all alone shooting.
One thing that was an issue at Indiana State, and I guess it continued to be, was the press and reporters. I know even though he was trying to avoid the press, things happened that almost made it impossible to avoid journalists. I mean, there was a fight with a Cuban team and on the East Coast, he bloodied the nose of a Rutgers student who jumped onto the court. For a lot of people around the country, these were events that were the first time people have seen or heard Larry Bird and seen him play. I mean, as his career progressed, how did Bird and Indiana State handle the increased exposure that Larry Bird was getting around the country? What was it becoming more and more difficult to control the narrative of Larry Bird?
Well, let's be clear. For the first 2 years that Larry was in Terre Haute, no one cared about him.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's Terre Haute, it's Indiana State, it's a little school teetering on the edge of Division II. No one cared outside of Western Indiana. But you're right. By late 1978, that starts to change. Bird has averaged 30 points as a first-year player at Indiana State. He manages to make an all-star team coached by Denny Crum, the legendary coach at Louisville, that barnstorms across Europe in the summer of 77. He does have this epic fight with the Cuban national team in that tournament, and Sports Illustrated takes an interest, puts him on the cover of the magazine in November 1977. That is a lightning bolt moment for Larry. Nothing for him will ever be the same again. And when Indiana State starts that 77-78 season, undefeated, going 13-0 in the first 2 months of the season, now people care. Mm-hmm. And now the national media is coming. Sports Illustrated, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, etc. And, all of them want to tell this incredible underdog story of this kid, from the edge of nowhere who nearly slips away and is now, putting up points, changing college basketball, doing things people have never seen before. But Larry can't do it. He can't or won't, open up to these reporters. He doesn't want to talk about the past. He doesn't want folks to know about what happened to his father. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want folks to know that he had briefly been married to a high school sweetheart. He doesn't want folks to know that there was a daughter born of that failed marriage. All of these things were open secrets in Terre Haute, things that even the reporters knew. But, they didn't write those stories. And now here comes the national press, digging in. And, Larry fully shuts down. He goes dark. And really for the next year and a half, the entire time he's in the spotlight in college, Larry is trying to find the shadows once again. And that, puts, everybody in a difficult position. The media is there. They want to tell this story. And Larry won't talk.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side. Sign up at jackpot.com and you can bet on the world's best lotteries where the biggest jackpots are up for grabs. Powerball, Mega Millions, some of the biggest lotteries can be found at jackpot.com. Simply choose your lotto game, pick your numbers, or use their quick pick feature, and you're done. Sign up at jackpot.com with code DRAW24 and get a free lottery ticket with your first deposit. Jackpot.com, it's the world of lotto in your hand. Terms and conditions apply. You must be at least 18 years old and in the United States to play. Void where prohibited. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
In a moment of need, every second counts. So first responders, delivery drivers, and visitors can find your home fast, even in the dark. This is about more than just a number. It's about safety, visibility, and peace of mind. We created a house number that is not only a beacon of safety, but also a work of art. Crafted from durable stainless steel and waterproof acrylic, with efficient, low-voltage LED backlighting, it's uniquely yours. Choose from 6 sizes, 4 fonts, and 6 colors, and match your home's mood with bright, neutral, or warm white halo lighting. Add dusk to dawn, dimming and timing controls for complete command.
Every order includes free worldwide shipping, plus a 2-year warranty on lighted numbers and all powering accessories.
This is the ultimate home upgrade. A perfect blend of style, quality, and function.
Buy yours today.
You're listening to the House of Cards.
You lose track of time in those casinos. There's no windows, there's no clocks, and you never walk away from the table when you're on a heater.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishuttle with you. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with Keith O'Brien, author of Heartland, A Forgotten Place, An Impossible Dream, and The Miracle of Larry Bird. Now, was the Sports Illustrated cover the time when everything changed for Larry Bird? Was that the time when he went national? I know the cover called Larry Bird A Secret Weapon, and it had 2 Indiana State cheerleaders pictured with their fingers to their lips like they were trying to keep a secret. I mean, sports media was different back then. There was no ESPN. There was no streaming media. Was the Sports Illustrated cover the time when just Larry Bird just blew up all over the country?
Absolutely. Folks old enough to remember know that Sports Illustrated was the sports Bible in those days. It was everything. You would wait, and run to the mailbox, with excitement on Thursdays when that issue would arrive in the mail. It was everything. Mm-hmm. And it does fundamentally changed Larry's life, much to his own chagrin. And so, I did a ton of unprecedented reporting about that photo shoot. I wanted to know everything because that is the turning point. That is the moment, frankly, when Larry Bird becomes Larry Bird.
Yeah.
And I interviewed the last surviving cheerleader who's on that cover with him. I interviewed the sports information directors at Indiana State and assistant coach Bill Hodges, who helped set up that photo shoot. I interviewed the Sports Illustrated editors who assigned it, and I interviewed the photographer who shot those photos, a man named Lane Stewart. Lane Stewart was an icon of photojournalism in the 1970s, still alive today. And I wanted to know everything about that photo shoot because that is the moment where everything changes. And then nothing for Larry will ever be the same again.
Did Bird's dislike for reporters seem to go to a different level? I mean, I read the story where you, in the book about a reporter named Larry Keith contacted Bird's mother for a story, and I was like looking at it, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But Bird certainly did not want to talk about his family. He didn't want to talk about his divorce or his daughter, and he certainly didn't want to talk about his father's suicide. Did his dislike for the media become even more intense after this situation with Larry Keith? Even from the book, you said he almost blamed Ed McKee from Indiana State as kind of responsible for this incident.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Keith is the first national reporter who shows up. That photo shoot in October of 1977, while it changes Larry's life, it doesn't involve giving an in-depth interview. Larry's just a cover boy of a college basketball preview issue. He doesn't have to give a long interview. But when Indiana State starts that year 13-0, starts to move up in the rankings, Larry Keith, one of the lead basketball beat writers at Sports Illustrated, comes to Terre Haute for about 4 or 5 days, travels with the team to tell this epic story. And, I interviewed Larry Keith. Larry told me that the moment he approached Bird and told him what he was there to do, that Larry shut down as if he had been shut off by a switch.
Wow.
Like powers down. And so, Larry Keith has to do what reporters do, what, in fact, I had to do. For this book, you've got to now triangulate this story. And so, of course, Larry Keith is going to call Larry Bird's mother. And by the way, Georgia Bird was thrilled to speak to Larry Keith about her son. I mean, what mother wouldn't want to speak to this nice Sports Illustrated reporter, who's writing this glowing feature, to be honest, about her son. And so, yeah, Georgia speaks. The story, by the way, is overwhelmingly positive. Mm-hmm. The university is thrilled. The sports information department is thrilled. But Larry Keith in Sports Illustrated, in this feature that's published in late January 1978, does go into, quote, some of the stuff from back home. Larry Keith doesn't learn some things. He doesn't learn about Larry's father's suicide. He doesn't learn about the daughter that was born of that failed marriage to Larry's high school sweetheart. But he does learn, about that failed marriage. He does learn about the year that Larry has spent in the wilderness after leaving Bloomington and Bobby Knight. He learns, that he works for the city street department in French Lick collecting the trash. Larry Bird is frustrated about all of these revelations. He doesn't like that Sports Illustrated has gone digging into his personal life. And from that moment, Larry Bird shuts down. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to me that from that moment, Indiana State begins to lose games.
Yeah.
And the rest of that season does not go well, does not end well. Indiana State, despite Larry Bird's obvious greatness, will not make the NCAA tournament that year.
Bird was drafted by the Boston Celtics, but Bird did something that not a lot of players would do today. He went back to Indiana State for his final year, and it was an absolutely incredible year for Indiana State. During that year, how much pressure did Bird feel? I mean, I kind of got the sense that he was carrying the weight of Indiana on his shoulders. I mean, there was even a street named after Larry Bird in Indiana, which was incredible. How did Larry Bird handle that year, especially with the games and his avoidance of the press?
Well, you're right. Larry goes back to college, even though he's been drafted by the Celtics. In those days, an NBA team held your rights for a full year. As long as Bird signed before the following draft, the Celtics could have him. And you're absolutely right. No player would do that today. I mean, Bird is coming back, by the way, for no money. He's getting no money to return to college. I mean, forget about it. No player's doing that today. To answer your question, Bird would say he felt no pressure. That's how he would answer that question. But I don't think that's true. Indiana State starts the year, as an underdog. They're unranked in any preseason poll. They're picked to finish third or fourth in their own conference. The so-called experts believe that teams like Creighton and Southern Illinois are better than Larry Bird's Indiana State Sycamores. I mean, that's how little people believe in Larry Bird. But it begins to change. They finish the calendar year 9-0. They roll into the start of February at 18-0. They've moved to number 2 in the country. Everybody now is talking about this team, and it is the story of a team. Remember, up until this moment, Larry Bird has been a great college basketball, one of the greatest to ever step on the floor. But his teams haven't been great. They've never made the NCAA tournament. Larry Bird has never played on national TV. Most Americans have never seen him, period. But this team, is different. It is a group of guys who gets along. They're real friends. They share something in common. They're all second chance guys. They're all cast off guys. They're all underdogs. They know it. And, as they roll into the end of February, still undefeated and now playing on national TV for the first time ever, there's a lot of pressure. It's apparent in the way that Bird is handling himself with the media. It's apparent in the comments that the new head coach, Bill Hodges, the man who recruits Bird, makes to the national press. As Hodges will say as they begin to enter March, he's worried. He's worried about losing a single game. As he says, he thinks it will break the spell, break the momentum, and yet they continue to win, rolling into the NCAA tournament for the first time, undefeated, and number 1 in the country.
I'm glad you brought up Larry Bird and Magic Johnson before because, anytime you talk about Larry Bird, everyone talks about the great battles he had in the pros against Magic Johnson. But all eyes in 1979 were on Larry Bird of Indiana State and Magic Johnson for Michigan State. But again, as you mentioned, in college, they really didn't have a relationship that we think about seeing when they were in the pros. I mean, when you think about Larry Bird, sometimes you automatically think about Magic Johnson. I know they were on the international team together during college, but what kind of relationship did they have, if any, in college?
Well, I mean, that's, again, one reason why I wanted to write this book, one reason why I wanted to write Heartland. I feel like the story we've been telling all these years is it's frankly a little bit disingenuous. It's a disingenuous narrative. Yes, of course, by the 80s they know each other. Now they are real rivals. Rivals who will become friends. But that is not the case in the 70s. They meet one time in the spring of 1978 at the end of Larry Bird's second season at Indiana State. For about 5 days they play together on a team that's going to play a few games against the Russians, down in Lexington, Kentucky. again, during that window of time in which they're on that team, they barely interact with each other. They hardly speak. They're not hanging out off the floor. They're not hanging out at night. So, again, they don't really know each other. Magic Johnson in the spring of 1979 is no different to Larry than Sidney Moncrief or Mark Aguirre, two other future NBA stars who Bird also plays against that March. And so, while they will become friends and rivals later, they simply aren't in this window of time. And so, Magic Johnson, of course, comes into this narrative. He's in this book in the same way that Sidney Moncrief or Mark Aguirre are. Of course, they are going to play against each other in that epic championship game in March 1979. But the rest of the stuff, is simply, not part of the narrative because Magic didn't do anything to shape or change or form Larry. The far more important characters to me in this book are Bill Hodges, his head coach in 1979 and the man who recruits him in 1975. His high school teammates, college roommate Bob Heaton, and teammate on that 79 team. Those are the people who are fundamental to this narrative, and I think that's what makes it new and different, even to sports fans, even to Celtics fans. Even if you think you know the Bird story, sure. I would argue that you don't.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side.
You're listening to House of Cards. Check out our website at houseofcardsradio.com.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishottle with you. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with Keith O'Brien, author of Heartland, A Forgotten Place, An Impossible Dream, and the Miracle of Larry Bird. Now, Michigan State won the NCAA championship that year, and the game, along with the tournament itself, really changed the way television started presenting those games. I mean, people wanted to see Larry Bird, people wanted to see Magic Johnson, and TV executives really adapted and tried to capitalize on the tournament moving forward. I mean, it wasn't called March Madness back then. How did the year's tournament really change the way people view the NCAA tournament?
Well, I mean, it changed it in fundamental ways. 50 million people tune in to watch that championship game in late March 1979. It's the most watched college basketball game of all time. I mean, to put that in perspective for you, recent years tournaments, championship games draw an audience of about 15 million, 17 million, 18 million. I mean, that's a good audience today. This game in March 1979 changes the tournament in fundamental ways. It draws the largest television audience in college basketball history. It's still a record today. 50 million people will tune in to watch Bird, Magic, Indiana State, Michigan State. And just to put that in perspective for folks, I mean, more recent tournament championship games draw a significantly smaller audience. I'm talking about like 17 million viewers. So it's a massive audience. It's more than just a sports moment. It's a cultural moment. But I do think we have oversimplified this story. This game doesn't start March Madness. it's a significant moment in the snowball rolling downhill that gives us March Madness.
Sure.
Yes. But, over the course of the 1970s, the tournament is growing and growing. 3 different times in the 1970s, the tournament sets television viewing records. 1972, 1973, 1975. Because of those television viewing records, the NCAA decides to start airing the games during prime time. The prime time slot draws an even bigger audience. While all of that is happening, the tournament expands 3 different times, growing in size. By 1979, it now includes 40 teams. So Bird and Magic don't create the wave. They're riding this wave. Mm-hmm. And, really, like a lot of, great moments in history, at a moment where our culture is changing, where the world is changing, 2 transcendent figures, Bird and Magic, show up and they really amplify this wave. And that's what's happening in 1979.
Well, speaking of changing, the NBA even changed because the following year, Bird signed with the Boston Celtics for 5 years for $3.25 million, which at the time was the biggest contract awarded to a rookie of any sport. And again, moving forward, the NBA changed from that moment. They started in late October and they started the playoffs in June. And it was interesting. Bird had to be available to the press when he got to the NBA. I mean, and then the NBA also started a new ad campaign that Bird was a part of. I remember that clearly. NBA, it's fantastic. I remember watching that on TV. How did Bird adapt to the pros? Certainly, he had to talk to the press. Did he eventually explain his relationship with the press during those years in Indiana?
It's interesting, based on my reporting for this book, Heartland, Magic Johnson comes to us like a fully formed version of himself.
Yeah.
As a freshman, in 1977, really Magic Johnson is exactly who he'll be later. He's charismatic. He's well-spoken. He loves the spotlight. He's friendly. He's got that smile. The press loves him. I mean, he's exactly who he'll be later. And that's just not the case for Larry Bird. He really is maturing in this window of time where my narrative is unfolding. And these really are the years where Larry Bird, becomes Larry Bird. When he goes to that first NCAA tournament in March 1979, he now has to speak to the media by rule. He has been ignoring the media for a year and a half, refusing to do interviews with print reporters specifically. And, once Indiana State makes that tournament, he can't do that anymore. He's got to speak. And, it really almost forces Larry to come out of his shell a little bit. And really, even in that 2-week window in late March 1979, he's fundamentally changing and really does, mature a great deal and makes the transition to the NBA and the spotlight that will follow him there much easier than people thought he would. But, of course, Larry Bird's still never going to be Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
He's going to do those commercials, the NBA, it's fantastic. He's going to give the interviews because he's got to give the interviews. But, he never will, become the media creature that is Magic Johnson.
I have to tell you, one of the most touching portions of the book was when the son of his Indiana State teammate, Bob Keaton, committed suicide. Bird met with him and really talked to him because Bird, above all people, knew what Bob was feeling because of Bird's father's suicide. And that was one of many stories that I have never heard of. And that story was never revealed in the press. And it was surprising to hear about Larry Bird really comforting someone like that. What was his relationship like with his other teammates from Indiana State?
To me, the most powerful part of the book is what happens after
Yeah.
that game in March 1979. That is, it is in some ways the climax of the book, and others it's not. To me, the climax of the book is what happens, when the Indiana State team comes home after that game, and the reception they receive in Terre Haute, and everything that happens next. I mean, this moment is so big that it does change everything, not just for the NCAA tournament, the NBA, and Larry and Magic, but for the people in that locker room, for the characters in this book. And it really, almost moves across the landscape like this furious tide, and it picks them all up, and it takes them to places they never would have gone otherwise. And so, what happens after 1979, is to me the most powerful part. I think in that final section of the book are some of the most emotional and compelling moments. This moment, and the time that these other characters spent with Larry in this moment, really does reverberate through the decades. That's true for Bob Heaton, Larry's college roommate. That's true for many others on the team. Over the years, Larry, while he remains a complex and complicated and sometimes prickly figure, he has quietly done things for people that have fundamentally changed their lives for the better. And he's done that while seeking, no attention for it.
Does Larry Bird have a different legacy in Indiana than he does in the rest of the country? I mean, I'm a guy sitting in New Jersey who went to school in Boston, and anytime I think of Larry Bird, I think of him in a Celtics uniform. I'm curious if people from Indiana think of him differently than NBA fans across the country or people who live in Boston. I mean, is his presence or influence still felt in Indiana more than anywhere else in the country?
Well, I'll say one thing based on the book tour I've just come out of here. He's just as beloved, if not more, in New England than he is in Indiana. He really is a son of New England, even though he never comes back here anymore. And so, I think he does belong to everybody. But he certainly has a specific impact in Indiana, and I wanted to chronicle that impact as much as I could. And one thing I did, Dave, was I wanted to see if I could put a number on it. I spent a lot of time in Terre Haute and French Lick in Western Indiana, Southwestern Indiana for this book. And it was clear to me, just having boots on the ground there, how important he was there still today. I mean, there's a enormous statue of Larry Bird outside the Indiana State basketball arena. There's a Larry Bird museum in downtown Terre Haute on Wabash Avenue. And right outside that museum, there's a 33-foot mural of that very first Sports Illustrated cover that we discussed earlier, the cover of Larry Bird with those cheerleaders. It's right there on Wabash Avenue. People come from around the country, around the world, Terre Haute, just to see these things. And so, I asked the local tourism bureau to see if we could try to run some numbers and quantify in objective ways what Larry meant to Terre Haute. And I do have a number. Larry Bird is worth to the local economy of Terre Haute, Indiana, every year about $7 million. $7 million he's worth to the local economy of Terre Haute on an annual basis. And, we just came out of the NCAA tournament right now. Were there some great games? Yes. And were there some incredible players? Absolutely. Is there a player who just played in this tournament who 50 years from now is going to be worth $7 million to the local economy of his college town? Absolutely not. There's no way. And that to me is the power and the impact of Larry Bird.
Keith, we're running out of time, but can you tell everyone where they can get a copy of Heartland? And if you have a website or social media address you want to give out, please do so.
Well, Heartland is available wherever you buy your books. It's available in your ebooks. It's available in audiobooks. However you consume books, you can have Heartland in that medium. My website is keithob.com, and you can find me on Instagram and other places at O'Brien Story.
Keith O'Brien, author of Heartland, A Forgotten Place, An Impossible Dream, and The Miracle of Larry Bird. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about your great new book. Heartland is an incredible look at the life of Larry Bird, which is a person not a lot of people know a lot about. It is the origin story of one of the country's greatest basketball players, and it's absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Well, that'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next time with House of Cards.
You build a house of cards around a loveless